Child marriage is not, I think everyone in the call may already know, it's not exclusive in Malaysia, but it's still heavily practiced here due to multiple reasons, due to some religious beliefs and whatnot. But in general, I think for any person who is interested to work on child marriage, you need to put on an optics to believe that child rights are equal to human rights. So therefore child marriage is a form of violation of hak seorang kanak-kanak. And we can go into deep as to why it is pencabulan hak seorang kanak-kanak kalau amalan atau budaya perkahwinan kanak-kanak tetap diamalkan in a particular country. But in general, I think from the first get go, we shouldn't minimize or we shouldn't minimize and also take light of child marriage. It is harmful to an extent. It is a violation of hak seorang kanak-kanak. So yeah.
My general opinion about perkahwinan bawah umur ni, benda ni dah jadi macam a cancer in our country sebabnya ada an enabler, maksudnya ada orang yang menyokong benda ni sedangkan kajian dah banyak sangat buat. Benda ni sebenarnya buruk untuk kanak-kanak. Benda ni boleh membahayakan kanak-kanak tapi somehow ada orang yang menyokong cakap elak zina, which is not true. So benda ni kalau orang bincangkan pun suang-suang kuku je, so tak ada action. So that is my opinion on child marriage.
I think that child marriage in Malaysia is very easily exploited by groomers, and a lot of the cases that I see is that um, there is a certain trend where a lot of the times teachers will marry their students, and I think that it's not really good. And the way is that when those things happen, it allows for predators to do this more enably and more freely, and actually encourages that kind of culture to be prevalent in Malaysia.
I think one thing that I would like to just emphasize, from that question of yours is pertama sekali, mature kids is a myth. Kids shouldn't be mature. Kids should be childish. They should live their lives however they want it. They should be reckless. They should be playful. A child shouldn't be mature at the age of 13 or 14. A child doesn't have to be mature. That's why adults in a child's life exist. So I rasa that notion has to change immediately. You don't put the pressure on the child to have to be okay, like kalau kanak-kanak tu matang, okay, the society adores the child. When in reality, you're stripping away the rights of the child to enjoy dia punya childhood misalnya. So I think that's the first thing when it comes to child marriage as well. People are willing to accept the idea of child marriage kerana it will help the child to mature. Why does the child need to mature at a really young age? The child should be able to not carry the weight of the world on his or her shoulders. Itu yang pertama. Yang kedua is definitely the masyarakat tak sedar bahawa apabila perkahwinan antara dewasa dan kanak-kanak tu berlaku, there will be a lot of power dynamics involved. So kanak-kanak sendiri, especially in Malaysia kan, our Eastern culture is we really put adults on a really high pedestal. So children, like what you say does not count. What you think is can be heard, but probably it doesn't carry any weight. Yeah, exactly. So imagine if a child is married to a slightly older person throughout her life or his life lah, tak kisahlah kan who is the child in the marriage, dia akan percaya whatever they feel is not as important as the spouse because he or she is the younger person. So therefore I kena dengar cakap. So even though for instance that night the child is not up for sexual engagement on that night, kena jugalah because you kena hormat your husband, or you kena hormat the older person in the relationship. And that's not just we haven't gone into macam what about if the child nak bekerja for instance, but obviously dia tak dibenarkan because you're the child, you need to listen to the older person in the relationship. So there's a lot of power struggles in a child marriage that can lead to many abuse. Not just sexual abuse, we're talking about physical abuse, domestic violence, we're talking about financial abuse as well. Banyak gila benda yang this child is gonna be trapped in that marriage because we make our children believe that they come second after adults. Padahal kita sama je. Yeah.
Okay, kalau sebenarnya bila budak bawah 15 tahun lah, bawah 18 tahun, bila dia mengandung sebenarnya body dia belum boleh terima lagi nak rasa, nak carry a child. He is a child, lepas tu dia kena carry another child. Wouldn't it be like absurd macam tu, sebab dia budak-budak, lepas tu cervix dia tu sebenarnya belum cukup membesar untuk tampung budaknya. Jadi bila dia mengandung juga, dia akan ada problem dia yang paling risiko paling besar dengan mengandung bawah 18 tahun ni ialah kematian. So itu yang kita tak nak. Sebab apa? Bila mengandung bawah 18 tahun ni, dia akan cenderung untuk naikkan the rate of maternal mortality. So bila beranak sendiri tu kan sakit, dia boleh hilang banyak darah, dia boleh kena anemia. So all these things, benda tu dia affect a lot on sexual health of a children, dan dia punya pembuka atau sebabnya semua ni boleh berlaku sebab dia kahwin. Kalaulah dia tak kahwin, mungkin ada kemungkinan dia akan mengandung luar nikah ke apa, tapi still dia punya possibility kita boleh kurangkan sebab dia tak kahwin, dia takutlah untuk mengandung kan. Tapi kalau dah kahwin, dia bebaslah untuk mengandung. So benda tu akan affect dia punya sexual health.
No, definitely we shouldn't encourage child marriage because most of the time is that what happens is that these children, they get groomed into thinking that like to be groomed into the marriage, and most of the time these teenagers, they also get pregnant quite soon, and you can see that it's really sad because the power dynamics aren't the same between these children and the teachers or the people older than them that are years older. And yeah, they might be, for the adults, they already want to get married, settle down, but for the children, their life is literally just starting, and they're not even in the right state of mind yet to be really be able to make decisions as big as marriage maturely enough.
Okay, one thing for sure, kenapa Malaysia is really comfortable with child marriage happening and why it's like in polar opposites dengan negara seperti Norway, di mana they criminalize those who are engaged or those who are involved in child marriage, is because in Malaysia, perkahwin kanak-kanak itu adalah tidak salah di sisi undang-undang. Be it Islamic law, Sharia law in Malaysia, or our civil family law. You set a stupid age limit to marriage, but you put a bloody exception on application to get permission by the chief minister, or in Sharia courts, the Sharia judges. For the longest time, Anis, for the longest time, I mean, we've been talking about child marriage not recently because those that Sharia lawyer debate dengan the feminists. It has started when I started my activism in child sexual abuse. It has started while we were still in school. We were still in Sisari. It has always been an issue in Malaysia, but we never move. I stuck. Sorry. Yeah, but when we never move beyond child marriage tu akan tahu zina. Kenapa zina is such a big thing when you tak tengok benda-benda lain yang actually lead to children wanting to engage in zina at a really young age. You don't look into poverty. You don't look into preparing an ecosystem whereby a child can live optimally in that particular taman. For instance, is there enough playgrounds? Are there enough activities or extracurricular stuff that they can engage in other than dating and online apps? So we look at zina as the thing that we need to avoid. Tapi benda-benda lain sebab like poverty, access to education, access to opportunities, kita tak nak pandang. Zina kita nak pandang. Because that's the easiest way to deal with child marriage. But when kita tanya macam child protectors juga kan, contohnya macam Syed Azmi and whatnot kan, like he has shared before, like when he was dealing with children who were involved in child marriage, apa yang Syed Azmi kata, that these kids are opting for marriage at a young age because they think that's the only option that they have. Kita tak tanya dia like, after marriage you nak buat apa? They don't know that they can actually go overseas misalnya. They don't know that they can actually go to tertiary education. We bang on zina, but we don't provide other opportunities. Like for us who may be privileged, our school bagi kita banyak gila peluang untuk join itu, join ini. We go to a good school, we live in a really healthy and child friendly neighborhood. Cuba you pergi kampung dekat your area. What options do they have other than seeing people around them getting married? So I think it's about exposing our children to more options in life. They make an option for them and they do so much more other than, getting tied down and yeah. So it's not dealing with the main problem. It's not dealing with the failure of our government, failure of our contohnya municipals for ensuring that a neighborhood or a kawasan is child friendly enough for their survival. And it's not just physicality. We're talking about like the mental and social development opportunities for children.
Okay, I think elak zina and kahwin ialah dua benda yang berbeza. Zina dia punya highlight sex. It's sebenarnya bukan highlight, zina is sex technically. Sebab kita ni bukanlah orang-orang sekolah agama yang cakap zina mata ke zina apa. Memang zina bila everyone refer, it is sex. Perkahwinan pula on the other hand, there is sex in marriage. We all know that. Tapi maybe it's like 10% of it. Another 90% is the commitment, it's the obligation. It is the one thing your partner, you kena hadap your partner tu. Contoh kalau you kahwin 15 tahun, kita technically kahwin bukan untuk bercerai kan. So kalau lah you hidup sampai 80 tahun, dah berapa puluh tahun you kena hadap seorang tu. Do you want that ke? So macam perkahwinan ni sebenarnya bukan a solution untuk elak zina. Dan kalau you rasa lah you ni seorang yang beragama, you tak nak anak you berzina so you kahwinkan. Islam sendiri dah ajar macam mana you nak kawal nafsu. Dalam you tundukkan pandangan. Tak kisah you perempuan ke lelaki, tundukkan pandangan. Dan kalau you tak mampu, you berpuasa. And kalau kita kata benda tak praktikal kan, this is why people are pushing to have sexual education dekat sekolah. Bila dia ada education dekat sekolah, dia akan tahu. Maybe budak-budak ni tak tahu pun child marriage tu sebenarnya bahaya. So, dia orang rasa macam seronok lah kahwin lah, seronok. Tu kan boyfriend dia orang ke apa, seronok lah kahwin. Tak ada masalah pun kahwin, apa masalah. Jodoh dia orang kata kan. So, benda tu dah jadi tak betul. So, zina, perkahwinan, it is two different things. Sepatutnya dia orang tak patut link pun benda tu. Okay. So masalah child marriage ni, the main bigger problem kalau masih ada dalam masyarakat. Okay, there are cases yang child marriage ni diorang terjadi sebab dia berasal daripada keluarga yang miskin. So dia nak keluar daripada kemiskinan tu, dia berkahwin. Tapi masalahnya, bila dia dah kahwin, dia berhenti sekolah. So how would you say kitaran kemiskinan itu or the poverty cycle tu dah stop? Sebabnya bila dia berhenti sekolah, dia tak ada masa dia tak ada access to higher education. So bila dia berhenti kat sekolah je, dia kena kerja lah apa yang patut untuk menyara anak dia. So kita rasa dia punya main kesan dekat masyarakat ialah kalaulah benda tu it is poverty cycle tu would not stop. Sebab bila you berhenti sekolah, you kahwin, lepas tu you memanglah some people kan diorang ada business or anything, tapi kita nak but not everyone yang akan ada business. Kebanyakannya kerjalah apa yang patut just untuk sara anak pula. Kan ada saying yang goes yang tangan yang menghayung buaian tu akan menggoncangkan dunia. But how would you goncangkan dunia kalau you sendiri dah berhenti sekolah? So that is the main effect lah kepada masyarakat.
If a child is allowed to get married, is that really it's easy for the other partner, the person that's older, that has a bigger power dynamic, to somewhat abuse them, if I would say, because most of the time in which these kind of things happen, it's usually by children that really they they are solely depending on that kind of person. Usually, if you see in female like females, girls, teenager, is that they don't have any other source for financial independency. Okay, so what happens is that this other partner that has this full like dynamic can control everything. If the teenager chooses to maybe leave the other person, the groomer, they would not have any other advantages. Do you understand what I mean? It's like they are in a very disadvantaged situation, and most of the time, their education would stop there. Some of the times, the uh, the other older person wouldn't allow them any education, and that's when most of the time the parents to the child themselves let go of their responsibilities. I think I would feel sometimes I feel like they are robbed from their future and like a lot of other chances and education and more experiences they could have. Most of the time, I see like these adults that especially try to groom these children are actually people looking for other people that want to settle down, people that have no other dreams or like goals, but they are choosing children for these roles. And it's clearly something wrong and a very wrong and unbalanced power dynamic between them. Because then these children, especially girls, are expected to be housewives, to take care of their babies, to not further their education. And that's very wrong. And I feel like even sometimes these children they might feel regret at the future when they're a bit more mature to think about it, but they didn't have the chance to.
In my opinion sebenarnya, kita tak perlukan pun exception tu sebab kita dah tahu benda tu bahaya. Just put a stop into it. 18 kita kata 18, biarlah kurang daripada 18. Memang I think the concern of these people yang buat law ni, bila dia letak tu sebab somehow kalau kita say no pun ada je kat orang buat. Macam tengoklah laki-laki ni semua bila tak bagi poligami, kahwin kat Siam. Kan? So I think that is the same thing they are afraid of. Sebab tu dia orang letak circumstances ni. Tapi the problem is bila ada circumstances tu, people start abusing it. Lepas tu bila dia bagi tahu mahkamah, lepas tu mahkamah kadang with one of my trainer masa tu dia ada contact with dengan mahkamah syariah lah. Lepas tu dia macam ada dah tanya kenapa bagi kan. Tapi dah kalau parents tu sendiri cakap dekat hakim kalau lepas ni anak saya berzina, hakim nak tanggung ke dosa? Dah macam guilt trip pula hakim tu untuk bagi anak dia kahwin. So I think benda ni exceptional circumstances tu tak patut ada pun. Sebab bila ada, people abuse. Sebab dia tahu ada lorong untuk dia pergi, dia akan guna. Yeah, so that is my opinion.
Honestly, I don't know because I've not been in any kind of like that situation, and I do still think that child marriage is pretty much legal in Malaysia, right? And it's hard for the child themselves to really get the help that they deserve, and I believe that's actually where we should be starting to criminalize actually child marriage so that the child doesn't uh, be able to like have something from the law itself that can help protect them at that standpoint, because sometimes they're not in safe family environments. Even sometimes the people around them can't help them, and that's when we need the law to step in and give them the protection that they need.
Memang sebenarnya kalau kita parents ni memang memainkan peranan yang sangat-sangat besar. I rasa sebenarnya one of the ways juga sebenarnya untuk combat this child marriage thing, kita kena target parents juga. Memanglah kita target policy maker apa-apa semua. Tapi at the end of the day, masalah dia starts at home. Dekat rumah, mak bapak dia macam kahwin lah daripada anak aku gatal baiklah kahwin je. So kita kena target the parents, which is something that people tengah cubalah untuk melakukan, sebab kan mak bapak ni bila kita cakap macam mana nak uruskan anak dia, aku tahulah tu anak aku. So benda ni sebenarnya mentality yang sangat teruk yang that is in parents. So macam kita kena try and educate parents. Sebenarnya that is the only way we can do, is by educating them supaya diorang tu tak enable anak diorang untuk kahwin. And diorang patut berhentilah tengok anak diorang as something sebab dia dah tak mampu nak jaga ke apa, bagi dia kahwin sebab miskin ke apa. That is something that should be stopped. And the only thing we can do is by educating the parents, which is gonna be hard, tapi maybe we can start slowly lah. Sebab masalah memang child marriage ni dia punya root parents. Parents bagi, so kita semua dah tak boleh buat apa. Sebab yang bertanggungjawab pada budak-budak tu parents kan. Parents ni sepatutnya dia tahu anak dia tu rasa seronok je, belum matang lagi, tapi dia ikutkan anak tu. Dia sepatutnya protect the child daripada ketidakmatangan dia, tapi dia dah ikut sekali child dia. So I rasa kena educate them. That's the only thing we can do.
Um, definitely, I think to have more education surrounding this problem, because I feel like we don't give our children enough knowledge about these kinds of emotional exploitation, manipulation, because sometimes people will definitely even victim blame the person in this sort of situation where they think like they don't think about the emotional manipulation, the exploitation that goes on between the conversation of the adult or the child, and it will definitely benefit a lot of the children to have these sort of education in like when they're very young, because that's when they're more vulnerable and that's when it's more important to give them that kind of education. But parents and adults should really definitely, especially policymakers and lawmakers, to really look into and even push for the making of the criminalizing these sort of child marriages between like 16-year-olds.
Ni susah ni susah nak jawab ni. But I know you're like expecting $1 million answer, but to me you just need to talk to. Yeah, but basically to me, you just need to talk to communities. You need to convince your parents. You need to convince your uncles and aunties that our kids deserve better. You need to convince your cousins who are already having kids of their own. You need to tell them that hey, you have a child, and it's not as pretty as pictures that you post on Instagram. It's beyond that, because I think memang child marriage is a really niche and specific social issue, but it relates so much to other things in life. It relates to how adults um see children as properties, macam okay. Alamak. Am I lagging? Okay. Was my answer cut out just now? Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was saying macam like how adults take children as properties. Aku lahirkan kau, this is how I want things for you. You kena ikut cakap I. You don't treat children as equal beings. You don't take their ability to think for themselves. So that's how I think harmful practices involving children like child marriages, incest, bullying, semua tu boleh berlaku, because it's really the mindset how kita nampak children tu kita kena ubah. So I think the only way to go about it is not to have a national scale campaign. We've done that before. It obviously has failed. It's really putting going deep into your community and how you can talk to them. Like for instance, for me, I'm in Selayang. I should approach my folks here in Selayang, and I should understand what are their perceptions about child marriage. If you're from Kedah, you should approach your community in Kedah, because your context in Kedah is very different from my context in Selayang. So, you know, $1 million campaigns will not address child marriage until you talk to that makcik in that kampung and convince her that, your cucu deserves so much more than being someone's wife at the age of 15. So to me, it's communication and, seeing things from their perspective. Like for us, memang it's totally unacceptable, for child marriage to happen. But to them, that's probably their only way to survive. So how do we go down? Not go down. How do we make sure that we are on the same level as them so that we can have a proper and decent conversation? Yeah.
I rasa kalau untuk child marriage ni, kita boleh try and target the policy maker. Like last early this month tu lah, my program on women and children, FRAM punya program, kita adakan dialogue with people, policy maker dekat Terengganu. So kita bagi tahulah apa keburukan child marriage ni. So we have a dialogue with them. Dia orang kata apa, dia orang bagilah pula apa kelebihannya. Tapi dia orang sendiri ada yang menyokong, ada yang tak. That is normal lah kan. So I think the best thing kalau kita ni, sebab kita nak kita nak educate elders, it's gonna be a bit tough. So kita yang ada ni, siapa kita yang aware of this problem, kita boleh start educating. We have so many platform to educate, even as seorang rakyat biasa ni, kita ada social media. Social media is easy to go very viral. So kalau you tahu benda ni salah, you tolong educate people, sebab maybe people tak tahu. Sebab ada je budak-budak yang mungkin akan berpotensi untuk mengamalkan child marriage ni, ada je dekat TikTok, ada je kat Twitter, ada je kat Instagram diorang ni. Cuma bila diorang tak dapat education, mungkin diorang rasa benda tak salah. Tapi kalau kita yang tahu ni, kalau kita boleh bagi awareness pada mereka, mungkin mereka akan fikir 2 kali lah sebelum benda tu terjadi. And join NGOs. NGOs diorang, we have, bila NGOs tu kan, we have a bigger number of people, and kita akan jumpa juga orang yang ada, kita melalui NGO ni kita boleh connect with people yang ada power. Contoh macam I join FRAM, hari tu I join program yang kita target institusi kerajaan dekat satu negeri ni. So benda-benda macam tu kita buat. At least we do something, sebab kalau kita nak terus suruh tukar tu payah. But one thing I will applaud is negeri Selangor, sebab kan kalau kita tahu dekat syariah law, 18 for men, 16 for women, dia punya had umur minimum. Selangor baru naikkan 18 for both. So that is a good start lah. And ada a few negeri pun diorang tengah dalam proses untuk naikkan that thing. So slowly lah benda ni. I think like I would say tadi I've said, kalau you orang biasa, the thing that the easiest way for you to do, it is to go through social media. Social media ni you akan nampak lah, kalau you buat thread ke apa, sometimes people reply back. So kalau you boleh reply them back, so benda tu sebenarnya it becomes a dialogue. So kalau benda tu it goes viral, benda tu akan jadi satu awareness. Lepas tu sebenarnya I think memang kita nak target ni, sebab kita target youth, which is 18 and above. Dia sebenarnya remaja, kanak-kanak. So diorang ni their biggest influence social media. So kalau kita boleh pergi go through social media tu and tell them what is wrong, so kita akan dapat, mungkin kita akan dapat kurangkan, kalau tak 10 maybe 1. Sebab mungkin ada seorang dua yang tak tahu benda ni salah, and lepas tu dia rasa macam takut, oh kalau beranak nanti boleh mati, mungkin dia akan berfikir 2-3 kali untuk buat. That is what we can do lah. Kalau masyarakat yang kita juga sebenarnya boleh je kalau kita, tapi we can't do as an individual lah. We kena be together with some people, like what you guys are doing juga, bagi dokumentari as an awareness. So benda ni akan membantu lah sebenarnya untuk mereka faham benda ni salah.
First of all, they need to go for child rights workshops. They sendiri, like all policymakers kena belajar that child issues are not secondary or less than financial concerns of a country misalnya. Kenapa issues like, COVID, okay, obviously COVID is like a bloody pandemic kan, tapi it's given so much allocation, it's given so much, emphasis in the country's policy, yeah, attention. But when you look into women's issues, children's issues, they park it so bawah-bawah. It comes last in the ministerial concerns or in the things that they discuss in parliament. So I think they're whoever who wants to become a politician, you need to go for child rights, capacity building or capacity strengthening. You need to rewire your mindset to see that child issues are human issues, and human issues are, public healthcare concerns or like national safety concerns misalnya. It's not like you letak really at the last level of the concerns that you have. So that's the first way that I think whoever who wants to, especially our young people, because I have no faith at all in our current the current people that we have now. But those, your age and my age, young, considering to enter politics, you need to build that child rights lens. That's the first thing to go with it. And I think the second thing is, which have been done already, macam memang telah dilaksanakan, di mana those who are advocating for the eradication of child marriage, having dialogues with those who still are apologetic to the practice kan. But it so many things get in the way, bukannya efforts are not being done. Like during the PH government, they already developed a 5-year strategic plan to end child marriage in Malaysia. There's no continuation to that. Successes tak ada. They don't have the right background, the right expertise to continue on the work. So it's a highly politicized issue. Sadly, while kids' lives are on the daily being subjected to abuse, but I think if our politicians tak nampak benda ni sebagai a national safety concern, sampai sudah lah. It's just a JKM thing, and JKM pula bawah Ministry of Women and Masyarakat, and ministry ni sangat-sangatlah tak penting. If you tengok budget allocation pun, JKM and ministry punya, women's ministry gets not a huge sum of allocation. So from there you can nampak where our old men who are in charge, they put us kat mana. You tengok duit dia bagi kat siapa. Education ministry pun tak dapat. And obviously when we talk about child marriage, it goes beyond, the social welfare aspect. You have to look into education, you have to look into religious capacity building as well. Macam tu lah.
Satunya, semua kerajaan negeri kena naikkan to 18 years old. The minimum age 18 years old. Lelaki ke perempuan 18 years old. Buang that as exceptional circumstances. Sebab adanya benda tu, that is a loophole for people to abuse it. Second, health kita dekat Malaysia ni, kita tak ada senarai pemangsa seksual. So it is good to have that supaya kita tahu siapa pemangsa kat in our country. Memang akan ada, there is also a hole untuk 2-3 orang yang sebenarnya dia ni bukan pemangsa pun tapi guilty macam tu, tapi sebab kan takkanlah sebab 2-3 orang ni kita tak nak buat, sedangkan lagi 100 orang tu memang orang buat. So dia punya kebaikan tu dah way dia punya keburukan. So why not we have it? One last thing is sexual education, comprehensive sexual education. It should be in the school syllabus as a subject on its own. Sebab apa dia kena ada a subject on its own? Supaya cikgu yang mengajar tu, she or he is trained on how to teach that subject, and dia juga sebenarnya boleh ambil cases apa kanak-kanak kat sekolah ni di abused sexually oleh orang-orang di sekeliling mereka. Sebab macam kita tengoklah kes Ain tu, cikgu tu sebenarnya dia bagi rape joke tu, one, memang dia rasa benda tu tak salah lah, kita tak boleh nak buat apa. Second, he was not trained properly, dia cikgu BJK. So dia tak pernah tahu pun how to give good delivery on this topic. So cikgu-cikgu ni perlu di train how to give, how to deliver this subject, and dia juga kena supaya bila dia dah di-train, mungkin dia akan lebih open-minded. So budak-budak yang kena sexually abuse ni pun boleh datang kat dia and they feel safe. Sebab kita tahulah macam people have been saying, kalau pergi kat counselor nanti benda tu circulate kat bilik guru. So people don't actually trust their counselor kan. So kalau cikgu yang mengajar CSE ni, mungkin they feel safer sebab cikgu-cikgu ni yang dah ajar dia orang macam tu lah. So I think that is the three things they can do lah.
Yes, I definitely think children should be able to have their own platform to speak about these problems, but adults should participate in giving them that safe spot. Because in my situation myself, I speak on a lot of these topics, like social topics, that I have opinions on. But sometimes it's really disappointing to see the behaviors that some adults portray, the way that they're just cyberbullying me, insulting me, and it's really for adults to give that safe space for a student or for a younger person to have opinions, have their own like confidence, to speak on their own platforms.
Dari couple lagi ke?
Yes, kalau boleh. Ya, betul.
Allah. Tapi kalau ni, kalau macam saya sekat-sekat tu tanya sikit sebab saya tak pandai kan.
Okey, boleh.
Boleh lah. Okey. Saya setelah saya couple lah kan. Saya couple dia selama 2 tahun daripada 2009 2011. 2010 dengan 2011 saya start kenal dia lah selama 2 tahun. Lepas tu 2011 tu dalam 2011 saya kahwin lah. Okey, saya kahwin. Masa tu saya dalam sekolah lagi. Selepas sekolah, selepas SPM lah. Saya tak ada kerja lagi lah. Tengah kerja pun kerja biasa-biasa, kerja survey apa. Lepas tu kerja dekat pasar. Okey. Kerja pun dalam tak sampai setahun lah, dalam 8-9 bulan kerja. Lepas tu saya dapat kerja ni lah, Police Airport. Kerja Police Airport. Pergi interview lah 6 bulan, rekrut 6 bulan, tinggal dia apa dengan anak. Ada seorang dah anak time tu. Anak masa saya interview tu ada time tu dah 5 bulan dia anak yang sulung. Okey. Tinggal dia orang dekat dengan mak saya lah. Dia orang duduk kat rumah lah. Okey. Selepas habis rekrut tu 6 bulan, saya pun dapat kerja dekat KLIA. Dapur diri dekat KLIA tu saya terus bawa dia orang lah pergi KL, pergi Sepang. Duduk KL macam biasa. Duduk hari-hari. Kerja macam biasa, tapi kerja dekat KL ni biasa lah kan. Gaji kalau macam 1,000 lebih tu memang tak cukup lah. Kita orang, saya OT. Cuti pun OT. Cuti pun jarang-jarang lah. Ada kat rumah tu jarang-jarang duduk kat rumah. Kita orang kenal melalui adik dia. Saya kenal adik dia dulu. Saya kenal adik dia pun dalam 2-3 bulan je. Lepas tu baru kenal dengan kakak dia. Kenal pun kenal, bukan kata nak lebih-lebih, kenal biasa je. Lepas tu baru biasa kan. Lama-lama jadi inilah sikit. Macam tu. Bekas saya beza setahun. Dia tua setahun daripada saya. Yang adik dia tu beza 2 tahun dengan saya. Dia adik lah sikit. Adik daripada saya.
Adik dia tu lelaki lah.
Perempuan.
Kena kenal dekat kawasan
kita orang kenal dekat ni. Dekat masa tu ada apa nama tu? Jom Hebo dekat Kelantan. First time kot ada Jom Hebo.
So maknanya tahun 2000 kenal dia tak berapa lama lah kan? 2011 tu
kahwin.
Kahwin.
2009 saya kenal dia tu, saya ingat dalam 2 tahun dah kenal dia.
Oh, 2009 tu awak umur berapa masa tu?
14. 15. Okay, 15
Betul lah 15. So maknanya
tak cukup 2 tahun tapi kenal tu dekat-dekat 2 tahun macam tu lah. Saya tak ingat
So waktu kahwin tu masih 17 lah, belum 18 lah.
17. Selepas
Betul-betul lepas SPM.
ambil result pun dengan dia.
Boleh cerita sikit tak macam mana boleh decide untuk kahwin tu? Maksudnya daripada bercinta tu semua, kemudian kalau boleh cerita detail lah, macam mana boleh macam okay, kita dah decide untuk kita kahwin. Tapi saya baru ambil SPM ni. So mungkin you boleh cerita pengalaman masa tu. Macam mana boleh decide nak kahwin and macam mana you berkahwin dan ya.
Macam mana kita orang ni, saya selalu ni lah, kalau time tak sekolah tu saya pergi rumah dia lah kan. Pergi rumah dia tu kenal dengan mak ayah dia apa semua lah. Dia bekas isteri saya ni, dia dulu sebelum kenal tu dia tinggal dekat KL, dekat Puchong. Dia sekolah dekat Puchong. Lepas tu lepas kenal saya tu, dia pun sekolah pun dah habiskan dia. Dia pun main pindah kat Kelantan, duduk kat Kelantan. Bila kenal saya dengan dia tu, jadi dengan mak ayah dia, orang mak ayah dia cakap apa ni? Cakap orang kampung tak manis lah tengok kan. Jadi saya pun inilah, saya sendirilah pergi jumpa dengan ayah dia apa semua. Bincang dengan ayah dia macam tu. Tapi time tu orang tua mana bagi kahwin. Tak bagi. Mak ayah saya tak bagi kahwin. Tapi kita orang nak juga kan. Macam paksa lah. Nak juga. Dia pun terpaksa bagi. Macam tu lah. Terpaksa. Mak ayah dia pun terpaksa bagi. Mak ayah saya pun terpaksa bagi. Macam tu. Jadi saya dulu nakal lah. Nakal sikit. Nakal sikit tapi lepas kahwin tu Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah 100% lah saya boleh berubah sikit. 100% tu lepas kahwin tu saya berubah lah sikit. Dia saya semua yang urus, saya sendiri. Saya time tu budak lagi kan. Saya pergi majlis agama ni kan. Majlis agama ni saya pergi sendiri. Saya seorang lah pergi. Saya isi borang apa semua macam tu. Isi jumpa Tok Imam. Lepas jumpa Tok Imam saya bincang-bincang dengan Tok Imam. Lepas tu hantar borang dekat Balai Islam lagi. Okey, lepas tu Balai Islam ada minta ni lah, dia suruh bawa mak ayah pergi jumpa hakim ke apa? Syar'i apa? Saya tak ingat. Dia suruh pergi jumpa sana untuk bagi kaunseling sikit dengan job dia lah. Kebenaran untuk berkahwin bawah umur. Okey. Lepas tu saya bawa lah ayah saya pergi jumpa dekat Balai Islam tu. Saya bawa ayah saya. Dalam tu dia cakap lah tak menyesal ke ni, tak berfikir panjang ke nak berkahwin awal. Macam tu. Saya pun budak kan. Biasalah. Nak macam tu.
Maksudnya dekat mahkamah tu ada sesi kaunseling lah, dia tanya juga.
Nasihat kita. Dia nasihat, dia cakap saya elok-eloknya kalau pendapat saya Encik Firdaus ni tak payah lagi lah, tunggu habis sekolah, habis belajar dulu macam tu. Baru dia baru kahwin lah macam tu maksud dia.
Tapi dibolehkan lah sebenarnya kan.
Dibolehkan. Kalau mak ayah setuju, dia dibolehkan lah. First kahwin tu saya susah lah sikit lah. Susah sebab kerja gaji pun kecil kan. Kerja apa, kerja 7E apa, kedai-kedai macam tu lah kerja. Tapi time tu first kahwin semua manis. Lepas tu saya cerita dekat lepas ni lah saya kerja dekat lepas saya kerja ni lah, dapat kerja polis airport lah jalan. Saya start dari situ. Okay, kita orang duduk kat KL tu tak ada family kan, kita hanya berdua lah dengan anak orang. Okay, susah lah bang, susah sikit duduk KL, macam gaji 1,500. Okay, okay, dia macam mana. Okay, time tu saya kerja dekat KLIA 1 lagi lah, KLIA 2 tak ada lagi. Dia pun macam first tu dia jadi dia nak kerja. Dia kerja sebagai apa ni, pengasuh lah kan. Bekas saya tu. Pengasuh. Pengasuh selama apa dekat setahun lah, tak sampai setahun. Okey. Lepas tu dia tak nak jadi pengasuh, dia kerja dekat CCT. Dia kerja dekat CCT tak sampai setengah bulan, setengah tahun dia buat apa cakap, dia main kayu kayu tiga kayu tiga lah time tu tahun 2014 time tu dia dah buat ona lah kan. Dia dah buat ona time tu saya baru ada anak seorang. Time tu saya tengah struggle cari duit, kerja apa semua kan. Struggle lah, hoti apa semua, susah lah, memang susah. Duduk tempat orang ni susah. Bila dia kantoi, saya tak bagi dia kerja. Okay, saya cut dia punya kerja, tak bagilah dia kerja. Dia macam ni bang, orang apa ni, orang Kelantan apabila dia first duduk dekat KL, dia akan rasa lebih sikit lah. Sebab tu lah dia jadi macam tu lah. First dia buat rebonding. Dia buat rebonding. Dia tak curang lagi, dia buat rebonding, dia kerja, dia free hair lah. Sorry free hair sikit. Sebelum tu dia pakai tudung. Lepas tu dia free hair. Bila dia free hair tu dia kerja, mungkin dia rasa dia cantik kot. Lepas tu dia curang lah kan, curang. Banyak sebulan 2 jugalah saya perasan. Kantor dengan saya kantor tu malah tak bagi kerja kan, tak bagi dia kerja. Tak bagi kerja sampai 2000 berapa dia minta cerai dengan saya time tu. Dia minta cerai. Dia suruh saya cerai dia. Saya tak nak lagi sebab saya fikir dekat anak kan. Okey. Next tahun 2000 apa dia kerja, saya support dia jual nasi kan, jual baju dekat pasar malam, online lah. Banyak lah saya support dia. Banyak habis duit lah, saya cakap. Berbelah ribu lah habis duit tu. Nak bagi dia apa saya cakap, kerja kan. Lepas tu dia kerja dekat, dia nak kerja balik dekat KLIA 2 dan tu 2000 berapa 2018. Silap bukan, dia bukan kerja KLIA 2. Dia kerja online. Okey, dia kerja online. Saya bagi support sikit, saya bagi duit sikit untuk dia kerja. Bila dia meniaga macam biasa, letak nombor handphone apa semua. Orang ramai duduk PM dia kan. Lepas tu ini yang second dia curang. Dia curang. Okey. Yang second ni agak tulah sikit. Sebab kantor dengan saya dalam phone. Dalam phone. Lepas tu bila dia kantor tu, sepatutnya dia yang salah, tapi dia yang lari rumah dengan anak-anak pergi dekat Merapu. Bukan Merapu. Dekat Pahang. Dia lari. Saya kerja pun macam kerja tak kerja lah. Kita dah apa tu orang panggil dah bio kan. Lepas tu dalam seminggu macam tu saya tak boleh duduk sebab saya tinggal seorang kan dekat rumah. Saya pun pergi dekat rumah mak saudara dia dekat Pahang. Pergi dekat Pahang, pujuk dia lah. Saya yang kena pujuk. Saya pujuk dia stay tak nak lagi. Keras kepala lah. Okay, dia keras kepala. Lepas tu, saya pergi, bukan seorang, saya pergi dengan abang saya. Dengan kak ipar saya lah. Kak ipar saya cakap, tak payahlah. Tak payah pujuk lah. Ambil, Kak bawa balik pergi Kelantan. Balik Kelantan. Balik Kelantan sampai mak ayah tahu. Kan, mak ayah semua tahu. Dalam 4 hari saya duduk Kelantan, ayah saya cakap, jom kita pergi sekali lagi. Pergi pujuk dia. Dengan mak ayah saya pergi. Jauh. Memang jauh gila lah. Dekat Pahang. Jauh lah mak ayah saya pergi. Saya yang drive pergi dekat Pahang. Sampai malam. Saya masuk pujuk lagi. Dia tak nak juga. Dia just memang dia memang nak stay situ lah. Tak nak balik dengan saya. Lepas tu ayah saya pula pergi pujuk dia. Dia pun tak nak. Dia tak nak juga. Saya bercakap tak payahlah. Stop lah pujuk dia kan. Okey, balik. Saya bawa anak saya yang sulung sebab dia sekolah kan. Dia lama nak sekolah. Okey, bawa balik pergi KL. Dalam 2 hari saya duduk kat rumah saya kat KL tu dengan mak ayah saya. Dia pun balik. Dia baliklah rumah. Balik rumah. Tak tahulah dia balik dengan apa. Duduk dalam rumah tu, lepas tu mak ayah saya pun balik Kelantan. Duduk dalam rumah tu, saya dengan dia, anak-anak, macam saya duduk seorang dalam rumah. Dia buat saya macam seorang-seorang. Okey, selama 2 minggu lah kan. 2 minggu. Macam tak ada orang, macam tak kenal. Saya pujuk dia. Saya pujuk banyak kali lah. Adalah 10 kali ada lebih kot pujuk dia nak apa dengan saya kan. Sedangkan dia buat salah, saya yang kena pujuk. Kawan-kawan lah ni, member siapa kata tak payahlah cerai. Pujuk dulu macam mana dia nak apa, bagi dia. Dia keras kepala. Okey. Sampai tu masa tu saya memang tak boleh nak apa? Cakap tak tahan saya pun ajak dia pergi mahkamah. Saya tak ajak dia pergi mahkamah, dia nak pergi mahkamah. Okey, orang cakap koyak macam apa? Macam apa dia cakap, dia tahulah dia cakap apa? Mungkin dia tu saya rasa dia cakap ni, dia ni Firdaus ni tak berani buat ni, tak berani buat. Memang saya lembut lah. Tak berani buat. Okey, saya pergi, saya settle pasal tarikh apa semua. Okey. Tahun 2019. Bulan 5. Dan itu puasa lah. 7 bulan 5 2019. Pagi saya kerja malam. Memang saya kerja time tu saya duduk asing dah. Saya tak duduk asing ke. Saya duduk dengan dia lagi sampai hari saya cerai dia. Okey, saya kerja, lepas tu balik kerja tu memang saya bawa dia pergi mahkamah terus lah. Lepas tu cerai. Lepas cerai tu saya hantar dia. Dia menangis, dia minta maaf apa semua kan. Dia menangis lah. Dia menyesal lah. Macam tu lah. Lepas tu saya pun pindah rumah bujang. Okey.
Wah, thank you Firdaus. Panjang cerita. Cuma saya nak cuma saya nak ada apa saya nak clearkan balik beberapa point lah yang mungkin saya kurang clear.
Okay.
Masa cerai tu bercerai dekat mana tu? Dekat Kelantan ke kat KL?
Dekat KL.
Dekat mahkamah dekat mana? Putrajaya ke apa?
Mahkamah Banting. Kuala Langat situ.
So maknanya awak berkahwin dengan dia dari 2011 sampai 2019.
19.
Dan apa, alhamdulillah lah ada berapa orang cahaya mata?
Dua.
Dua
Saya
orang.
pasang.
Laki perempuan.
Laki. Yang sulung tu laki, yang dua tu perempuan lah. Seorang tu 9 tahun, seorang lagi 5 tahun.
Okay. So maknanya punca utama yang Firdaus cerita tadi tu, dia yang curang sebenarnya. So Firdaus chapter 2 pun semua dia terus merajuk dan dia lari dah.
Dia lari.
Dia lari. Okey. Oh, so lama jugalah tempoh perkahwinan tu, dalam 8 tahun jugalah kan.
First saya cerai tu dia tak nak jaga anak. Dia cakap kau lah jaga anak tu lah. Aku tak, duit tak ada apa semua. Lepas saya cerai tu, saya dapat tukar Kelantan. Saya kerja, saya duduk saya stay KL, lagi kerja KL tu 2 bulan. Lepas tu dapat surat untuk tukaran tu, rezeki kan, dapat tukar Kelantan. Balik dengan anak. Balik dengan anak, duduk kat Kelantan. Jaga anak sampai 2020 kan. 2020. Bulan 12 2020 jaga anak. Lepas tu 2020, 2021 tahun ni dia minta nak ambil anak. Kita orang tak buat file pun, tak buka file pun untuk anak ni. Sebab kita orang fikir tak nak bergaduh sebab anak lah. Dia ambil sekarang dia sekarang ada dekat Sepang lah. Dia dah berkahwin dah. Dia berkahwin dulu daripada saya.
Firdaus kahwin yang baru ni bila tahun ni?
Raya Haji baru ni. Bulan
baru
7.
lagi.
Waktu Cik Firdaus awal nak kahwin tu kan, sebab kan time tu macam Cik Firdaus cakap lah, macam budak lagi, kerja tak tetap lagi, apa semua dia kan. Sebab kita budak, kita tak tahu apa-apa kan waktu budak-budak. So waktu awal-awal tu nak kahwin, Cik Firdaus rasa macam sedar tak macam tanggungjawab yang kena galas selepas perkahwinan tu? Sebab pernah tak fikir macam aku budak, aku tak ada kerja, bukan tak ada kerja tetap, macam mana aku nak handle marriage tu, perkahwinan tu? Apa yang Cik Firdaus fikir lah time tu?
Time tu tak ada fikir pun macam tu. Tak ada fikir pun. Sekejap lagi ada anak, nak kena tanggungjawab kan. Tak ada fikir pun. Yang fikirnya, yang time tu saya fikir, alah, tanggungjawab besar mana sangat. Kerja bagi duit, bini makan. Macam tu lah. Mestilah nak.
Nak dari segi maksudnya tak nak kahwin ke? Yeah.
Tak nak kahwin, lepas tu belajar dulu kan. Study dulu. Kerja dulu. Oh kahwin. Bagi saya lah kan. Nak kahwin awal ni boleh. Tapi kita apa? Macam mana ya? Boleh je nak kahwin awal ni, tapi kita kena pandai didik isteri tu. Didik isteri kita pandai. Silap daripada saya juga, bukan saya cakap dia yang silap. Sebab saya ni tak pandai nak didik. Macam kalau siapa-siapa nak kahwin awal boleh je. Tapi biar saya elok-eloknya tak payahlah, sebab kita kena kerja dulu. Kerja dulu,